either 205 or 206. We talk about Bridgerton for a while. So you'll get to hear all of that.
Okay, so maybe don't rehash old ground here. Unless you want to do a Bridgerton podcast.
Oh, Bridgerton. There you go.
Oh, so tempting.
Breakfast in Bridgerton.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair, a global Witcher podcast. My name is Alyssa from GoodMorhen, and I'll be your host as I and our international hanza accompany Geralt of Rivia and his destiny, Cirilla of Cintra, across the continent. Well, I hope you guys have been doing well. I've been quite busy the last few weeks, so sorry that this episode is going up a little late, but we have a bunch of exciting stuff coming up, including meetups and online meetups. This Saturday, October 15th, join the Hanza in London for their rescheduled meetup. That's this Saturday, October 15th, 2022, and join the Hanza Discord for details. Meanwhile, next Saturday, we'll be having our second annual Hanzaween Halloween cosplay contest and party. So join us on the Hanza Discord, of course, in the lounges there, and we'll see you in your best Witcher closet cosplay. If you don't know what closet cosplay is, just get the closest thing you possibly can from anything that you already own to look like any Witcher character from the books, the games, or the Netflix show. We had so much fun last year. Everyone was super creative. We had 2 Philippas, a Drowner, Nivellen, Yennefer. So make sure to join us this year. That's next Saturday, October 22nd, 2022. Special thanks to our patrons for supporting the show and our producer-level patrons, of course. Louise of Cahir, the owner of the Churlish Porpoise, Katie, the Redhead of Toussaint, Jacob B., Ava of Gullet, B. Haven of the Edge of the World, Charlotte from Vengberg Glamorai, Red Kite, the Original Roach, Conringer's Cat, Libby, Jendi Mendilovich, Wolf, Corey from the US, John of Riblia, Tom from Australia, Jill Kate the Tabby Witch, Ollie from Sweden, James Carson III, Psilocybe Sorcerer, a Toussaint Knight, Jeanette of Brocalon, Miriam of Temeria, Softy, and Mary the Moo. If you'd like to hear more about becoming a patron of the show, head over to patreon.com/breakfastinbeauclair. As for this episode, first-time guests Allison from the US and Beau from the US call in for our discussion of Netflix's The Witcher, episode 207, Voleth Meir. Join us as we discuss Ciri's deadly consequences for the people of the continent, the willingness to hope, how Cahir's return to Cintra and Francesca's seeming abandonment change Fringilla, Voleth Meir's hand in elven genetics, Geralt's quote-unquote special friends, Vilgefortz and Tissaia? What? And the definitely-probably-possibly-canonical first Witchers, Phil and Gordon. In our mid-episode news segment, Tidings from Toussaint, Larson Witcher Flicks shares updates about The Witcher Season 3. Without further ado, let's get to our discussion of Netflix's The Witcher 207, Voleth Meir, Part 1. Welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair. My name's Alyssa, and today we're welcoming 2 new members of our Hanza to the show. My first guest is currently a pharmacy and PA student at the University of Washington in Seattle. Please welcome Allison from the US. Hey, Allison.
Hi, how's it going?
Hello, I'm good.
Great.
And my second guest comes from Colorado and currently works at an optical lab in the Centennial State. Please welcome Beau from the US. Hi, Beau.
Well, hello, all.
So I'm so excited to have both of you on Breakfast in Beauclair, of course. Why don't we start off with classic question? How did you both get into The Witcher?
At least from my kind of experience, it's a little bit more recent than most people who have been on the show. Actually started pre-pandemic. I use that as a timeline for a lot of things now.
As we all do, yeah.
Pre-COVID. I started with actually the show when the first season came out, and I've always been into fantasy. So when I was a kid, I was really into Lord of the Rings. My brother was really into Lord of the Rings, so I'm like, oh, I want to be like my brother and really be into this. So that's kind of how my fantasy obsession started. After the show came out, I'm like, oh, this is cool. I want to find out more information. And then my brother's like, oh, there's a game. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a game. So decided to get the game. And then later I found out that there's actually a book series, and that blew my mind. So especially during COVID, I had so much to absorb when it came to the show, games, and then the book series. And actually, the book series, the first time I read it, it was on audiobook with Peter Kenny, which he does amazing job.
The best.
But he helped me get through so many runs. So I would listen to the audiobooks on the runs to actually keep me sane and like keep me focused. That's how I got into The Witcher, and it's just been a fun time, and I love kind of trying to introduce The Witcher to all of my friends. I've recruited a few more people, but still working on it.
Oh, yeah. Like, just convert everybody. Convert them all.
It's a valiant fight, isn't it? Yeah.
Bo, what about you? I know that you've been around since GoodMorhen. Like, you've been around for ages.
Yeah. Long time lurker at Breakfast in Beauclair here. But I first found The Witcher through complete coincidence. I was looking it up last night. It was, I think, January-ish of 2015. The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings, became available as a part of Xbox's free title for that month. And I played it. I had no idea what it was, but it's like immediately fell in love. Probably way too young to be playing it too. I was like 12 at the time, but I loved it. I really loved it, and it sucked me in. Then after that came The Witcher 3, and then I've just been drowning in Witcher content. Like, that game changed my life and just how I view media in general.
Yeah.
And so ever since, and then I got into the books, and it's just been a spiral downwards ever since.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had like a minor heart attack over you saying that you were probably 12 in like 2015.
I know, it's not right, isn't it? It's not right.
I was like, wait. I'm sitting here at like 30 being like, well, hold on.
Someone's got to keep you cool.
Oh my God, I'm so not cool. Like, it's so painful. I feel so old all of the time.
Oh, I disagree, Alyssa. Those karaoke videos, I think, prove to differ.
It's an old kind of cool. Yeah, so it sounds like both of you have experience with the games. What have been some of your favorite moments from those that really like sucked you into the world?
Well, for me, I've always been, at least with fantasy, I love learning about like the lore, the history, like the origin of like the elves, and for example. So sometimes I go in like deep dives. I think there's like Wiki Witcher or whatever, and sometimes I just keep on going until I'm like satisfied with like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
One of my friends for Christmas, she got me like this Witcher book or whatever that talked about like the history. It was really cool. I finished it in like within a day because I was just so obsessed, just learning kind of about like the background of everything.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. What about you, Bo? What was like one of the game moments that initially brought you in?
That's a good question. I recall the beginning of The Witcher 3 when you're meeting up with Vesemir and you slay the griffin, right? White Orchard and all of that. The first moment you ride Roach, it's dawn, the lighting in that game, it was such a quiet moment, but immediately sucked me into it. Like, I'd never seen anything quite like it before. And I was in from that moment on. Basically from the very first scene is what I'm trying to say.
The love started from the beginning.
It was a really good opening between the visuals and also just like the mystery that's at hand.
As soon as I hear that animated intro,
oh yeah,
it's like it sends chills down my spine, and I listen to it every single time.
Yeah.
I think The Witcher 3 is the game I've played the most. Last time I looked, it was like a stupid amount. It was over 1,000 hours, I think, of pure happiness, pure unadulterated happiness.
Yeah.
How many like playthroughs have you done? Like, have you gotten all the different endings, or do you usually just do like the same thing every time?
I've never had the heart to do the bad ending. Never had the heart.
That's fair. Yeah.
But I have toyed around with several different endings, and I would say I've played through it maybe 4 or 5 times.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I'm currently on my like second playthrough. So with my like time that I have off, I'm like, okay, Witcher, time to have like spend 4+ hours of my like night doing this. But yeah, also with like the games that I love is just like the soundtrack. I would actually listen to the soundtrack when I'd be studying. And so, you know, it's Spotify where it's like, oh, you were the top % for this like artist. And I was like in the top like 0.1% for the artist who did the Witcher 3 soundtrack. And I'm like, oh gosh, I've been listening to this too much for studying. But
perfect study music.
I know, no, it's amazing actually.
Yeah. I feel like until you get to some of either the Gwent songs or the ones that are like really like creepy,
Yeah.
I'm like, I wouldn't want to be sitting in the dark studying and it just sounds like there's like monsters behind me.
It keeps me motivated.
Yeah, I mean, it's always so fun to, like, hear about how everyone gets into The Witcher, and yeah, I mean, your stories are no exception, and I love that, like, we can talk about the video games too, as much as the books and as much as the show. Yeah, so on that note, speaking of the show, today we'll continue our discussion of Netflix's The Witcher Season 2 with the penultimate episode, 207, Voleth Meir, in which Geralt reunites with Jaskier as he tracks Yennefer and Ciri. Meanwhile, tensions boil over across the continent. In the opening scene, Geralt commits to finding his ward following Rince's attack on the Temple of Melitele and Yennefer and Ciri's escape. At the end of the last episode, episode 206, Rince attacked the Temple of Melitele, and while Geralt was fighting them, Yennefer whisked Ciri away to, God knows where. So Geralt at this point is kind of like combing through the bodies of the Michelet brothers, and Nenneke comes over. He commits himself to going after Yennefer and Ciri. And it's clear he doesn't trust the sorceress anymore.
Yeah, at least for the opening scene, it was kind of just like very dark in that sense. Geralt was like scared and like, okay, what's the next step? Where's Ciri? Lots of emotions going on in his head, at least with Ciri and Yennefer. But yeah, you can definitely see that in terms of like the dark blue setting and the solemn music in the background.
Yeah, very, very strong contrast to the previous scene, right? And what an amazing fight that was. And to have this sort of quiet moment with Geralt and Nenneke, it's a beautiful moment. And how do you pronounce her name exactly? Adjua Ando? She is just wonderful. I mean, everyone has been saying this, but she's amazing.
Yeah. I'm obsessed with her in Bridgerton.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm pleased we get her here. And I hope we get to see more of her throughout the series because she is phenomenal in Bridgerton.
That's interesting. I haven't watched that show yet, but I've been meaning to. I didn't know she was in it.
Oh my God, it's like so juicy.
Give me all the drama.
But yeah, I mean, no, like you said, she's great. And it would be nice to see, I think, even more of her because it's possible to like use her more, especially I think from what we've seen from other shows that she's been in. Yeah, she's awesome though.
Well, yeah, because she was such a small presence in the books too.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a shame because I loved her in there as well. And she brings out such a unique, different side to Geralt that I think is beautiful. And I like that the show is trying to convey that.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
The line that she says, sometimes we assume the worst because we fear to hope. It's a beautiful sentiment. I feel like everyone can relate to that.
Yeah.
In our own sense. How hard it is to hope.
Yeah, especially when it's like you're just like in a deep rut or, I mean, everyone's probably been there. It's easy to connect to. And Geralt has definitely been there or is currently there.
And his reaction to it just kills me. It's so funny. Just this total Geralt sneer. He totally scoffs at it. But you can tell that Nenneke is chipping away at that hard exterior that is Geralt.
Yeah. It follows with what we know of Geralt from the books and the show. Thinking ahead to some of the other books, but it's almost like he never wants to admit that he has hope or he never wants to call it that. But there's no way that he wouldn't continue to do the things that he does if he didn't inherently have that hope, that belief, and that conviction. Even if he's scared or even if he assumes the worst about Yennefer, in particular in this episode, he's still driven to find Ciri, and that must come from somewhere.
And what would it be if not hope?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anger.
Anger, yeah.
Revenge.
That's always a motivator.
He can hope for revenge, I suppose.
He can hope for a lot of things.
Yeah.
What a sweet, sweet little boy. Yeah, and Allison, I think you had a note here about like some of the costuming as well.
Yeah, at least for Nenneke, I just like really liked her brooch. And then also she like randomly takes off a piece of it and like breaks it up and like puts it on Geralt's wounds, his like one tiny wound. And it's practical fashion in that sense, but it's just kind of really funny. And like, I'm like, oh, that's kind of a neat thing. I would love to have that.
It makes her feel like she's actively a healer, right? Just because she's always prepared. And it's a nice little touch instead of like having a belt or something like that, that it comes from that beautiful little brooch.
And it's neat to sort of as a costume designer standpoint to have it always be in the visual range of the camera too, right? If you have it on a brooch or something, the audience can sort of clearly see what she's doing and put two and two together and go, oh, wow, there's, like you said, Allison, there's a practicality to the magic here. And there's this sort of other realm we haven't even explored yet. Like, what is that? What is she doing? It's magic.
Yeah, as we'll see, the idea of using botany comes up throughout this episode as well. So I think it's a nice, like, small introduction to the level of expertise that exists on the continent. And we'll kind of see that come to fruition later on in the episode as well. So in the next scene, Ciri and Yennefer find themselves in Yorgo's home, only to discover Rince tortured and killed the family, which had helped Ciri at the end of the previous season. At the end of last episode, Ciri and Yennefer portaled away somewhere, and we didn't really know where they had ended up. Yeah, it's really crushing for Ciri that, everywhere she goes, she brings death and destruction, and it's really getting to her because she thought that she was so far removed from this family. There's no reason for anyone to target them. She can't believe that someone had even tracked her there, and yet here they are.
Yeah, it's the beautiful reality of the Witcher world, I think, is consequences are abound. And sooner or later, every single character feels repercussions for their actions. And this is one of Ciri's bigger moments, I think, in the show thus far of, like you said, realizing, wow, I am a threat to everyone I come in contact with. And there's nothing I can do about it.
I think, Alyssa, you were saying is just kind of like the building up the stress on Ciri. It's like, oh my gosh, here's another group of people that I really care about. And like you said, Ciri thought she had no connection, or nobody would know that connection between Ciri and this family. But it seems like no matter what, someone will find everyone that she's been with and potentially like put them at risk or kill them. And she's just scared of that and doesn't want to kind of put people in that position.
Yeah. And it's really like, who can blame her?
Mm-hmm.
Like, aside from the fact that she is like young enough to understand what's happening, she experienced the war in Cintra. She knows what she's basically trailing behind her. And she's seen all of that destruction firsthand. Given her like perspective on war and her experience with war, it's really heartbreaking for her to feel that it's following her around and there's nothing she could do to stop it.
Well, and a perfect representation of that sort of manifests right at the end of this scene where she wants to find Cahir, and send him into a bloody pulp.
Yeah,
that's what she wants to do. That's what her intentions are driving her towards. But she has this internal conflict of, what do I want to do versus what would Geralt want me to do?
Yeah.
Circling back on the theme of relatability, I think that is something every kid can relate to in a certain sense. It's the experience of coming into your own. Mm-hmm. And she's going through an extreme version of this right now, like the worst possible scenario. Geralt is a constant force in her mind.
Yeah, I think she says something along the lines of like, I want to go back to Cintra. I want to find the Black Knight. Like, I'm going to kill him. And I think Yennefer is even processing all of this. Is like, what the fuck? I just picked up like a little baby mercenary. What did I just do? Anya Schuller has such an expressive face that it's funny to watch her throughout the episode as she's processing who and what Ciri really is. But I think a lot of that, starts here, of course, as Ciri is starting to open up to this woman who she believes she can trust because she's one of like Geralt's special friends. And so she assumes she's going to be fine. But Yennefer takes advantage of that in a way because Ciri is saying, like, I have to go back to Geralt. And Yennefer, at the end of the last episode, I believe, was told by the Deathless Mother to bring what turns out to be Ciri to the door at Cintra. Yennefer uses this situation to manipulate Ciri quite a bit. She tells Ciri, if Nilfgaard captured Geralt, which they probably did, they'll probably bring him to their most local outpost, which would be Cintra. So we should probably go there if we were going to find him. And Ciri's on board immediately. She is ready to go save Geralt. Yeah, and this can't go wrong.
No, it's a good demonstration of Yennefer's ability to manipulate and easily read people and say, oh, I know exactly how to get into this girl's heart.
Mm-hmm. In the next scene, Tissaia tells Vilgefortz that Dijkstra is expected in Aretuza. I don't know, we're in Aretuza. Tissaya's at the window. She has her hair down for the first time in 2 seasons. And then Vilgefortz is in the back just like, come back to bed.
You have too many clothes on, dear.
And the meltdown that I had. I remember just watching it and being like, oh, I mean, okay.
This is another side.
Yeah. Oh, man. But a little unexpected, but it's fine. Like, I'm on board with it. They did allude to it at the end of season 1 where Triss is just like, ooh, is Vilgefortz our new daddy now?
Oh,
I was like, girl, this is sodden. You're busy. Stop. Oh, man. But what'd you guys think of this scene?
It was very unexpected. I remember that was like a, oh shit kind of moment. Like, okay, this is the direction they're going with this. Yeah, unexpected, but I am interested and intrigued by what they do with it. Mm-hmm. If they do continue it at all. This episode does explore a lot of interesting themes between the two of them. Yeah, I am curious to see where it goes.
Yeah, same. Like, what's going to happen to him in the show? Because, you know, in the book series, there's nothing between them. And then here, it's like, okay, this could add, like, a different dynamic that's a little bit more, like, heart-wrenching when it does come to a point that's not so good. And it should be exciting to see, or kind of like, oh gosh, later on in the season. So
yeah, that'll be what I'm most curious about. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think we're teased with their relationship throughout the episode between what's shown to the viewers and what other characters know about them. It makes it a little more interesting, and I like the way that they built upon it throughout the episode. So it wasn't just kind of like we saw them there that one time. They have a few little moments, and other characters know about it. It feels baked in, which is nice. But my notes, my notes in here just say Vilgefortz and Tissaia, and then it's like all exclamation points and question marks like down the page.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
yeah. And her hair, I think that was like the biggest thing, because it's like, oh, it's really pretty, but it's like, oh my gosh, this is Tissaia, like, relaxed, you know?
She feels vulnerable, doesn't it? It's interesting how such a simple action can make a character appear so differently.
Yeah, and her costuming, like when you say that she's relaxed, I think this is the first time we see her in anything even remotely unstructured. Mm-hmm. All of her dresses have had like high collars, like tight sleeves, and they're very clean in their silhouettes and their designs. And she has her hair down, like she has a bathrobe or like a kimono on. She's vegging.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like seeing this scene. It's like when you see like a professor or like a teacher outside of school and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like you relaxed or you going out. It's like kind of blows your mind a little bit. It's like, oh, you're not just a professor.
It doesn't feel right. Avoid.
There's that whole scene in Mean Girls where they find Tina Fey in the soap store. That's what just came to mind. Word for word.
But I do totally agree with you, Alyssa, in the fact that if it would have just been this scene and they didn't continue to build upon it later on in the episode, it would have felt forced.
Yeah.
And shoehorned in, but they do a good job of giving them more scenes together, giving it time to breathe. Mm-hmm. And so this scene initially was like
yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do a good job with it, I think.
But in the next scene, Fringilla feels pressure from the generals in Cahir. The Nilfgaardian leaders begin to suspect a spy may be in their midst, and the generals begin killing elves. We only recently got, the band back together in Cintra. Fringilla has been on her own. She's been thriving all season. She's been doing great. And then Cahir has been kind of mucking it for a while. But now that he's back as a general and as a commander, he's really putting some kinks in Fringilla's plan. And Fringilla's really starting to feel the pressure of his return.
Yeah, I agree for the most part, where Fringilla, like you said, was really happy, and her and Francesca were like vibing out, girls kind of ruling Cintra at that point, which is great. And then like Cahir and the other general come in and they're trying to just mess up her vibe. She had something good going and she thought it was going to really go somewhere, and they're like, oh yeah, you're not doing enough, or you're not like pursuing the goal that we want you to do, so you gotta change how you're acting. And especially from like Cahir, where she's like potentially like slightly intimidated by it can be difficult.
Yeah, rewatching this episode, I was just enthralled with the actress that plays Fringilla so much, Mimi Ndweni. Her whole presence as Fringilla is terrifying. Honestly, she is so commanding. And every scene that she's in, she steals it.
Absolutely. Like, she does a phenomenal job with the character that she's been given, which makes it even more interesting, I think, when you drop Cahir into that dynamic again. Because she's had all this time to grow into her own power and to start to, I think as Yennefer puts it in the beginning of the season, like, to really grow into her ambition. Francesca says this, in the previous couple of episodes, but she says that Fringilla feels so much smaller when Cahir's around. That's like a testament, I think, to like some of the range that Mimi has as well as she's playing Fringilla. And we'll see that explode.
Oh.
Yikes.
Yikes, yeah.
Before we continue our discussion, we're going to hand it over to Lars from Witcherflix for recent news in the Netflix show. When we come back, Allison, Beau, and I will continue our discussion of Voleth Meir.
Hey, it's Lars from Witcherflix, and this is Tidings from Toussaint. Welcome back, everybody. The post-production for Season 3 of The Witcher is currently in full swing, so it is only natural that it is quiet at the moment when it comes to news about our favorite show involving a white-haired protagonist. Fortunately, we learned about a few new actors and some recast characters that will appear in the new season. According to Redanian intelligence, British comedian and singer Josh Weller will play the bard Valdo Marx in Season 3. He is one of Jaskier's biggest rivals in the books. When Geralt and Jaskier stumble upon an ancient sealed amphora in the short story The Last Wish, which houses a djinn, Jaskier mentions Valdo Marx as the object of his first wish. Jaskier wants the djinn to kill Valdo. As it turns out, we will meet Valdo Marx in the new season of The Witcher. Due to a Redanian intelligence report, we might even know when exactly he could appear in Season 3. They speculate that there might be a big confrontation between Jaskier and Valdo during the Thanet Ball. Other new characters that will appear in Season 3 are of a show-only nature. Harrison Daniels will play Newberry, and Carl Watson will play a character named Eva. As it is often the case, these minor characters will appear alongside other characters' storylines. In other news, and which is only natural in a big, long-lasting production like The Witcher, two characters from earlier seasons will make another appearance in Season 3 and had to be recast. According to Redanian intelligence, the Dryad Queen Aithne could now be played by actress Lorna Brown, who is known for her roles on Vampire Academy or Devils. She could replace Josette Simon, who played Aithne back in Season 1, when Ciri made her way into Brokilon Forest and met the Dryads. Another Season 1 character has been recast due to a Redanian intelligence report. In the first season, the Skelligan warrior Krach an Crate was played by actor Blair Kincaid. He appeared during Princess Pavetta's Banquet, which adapted the short story A Question of Price. Krach will now be played by Icelandic actor Jóhannes Haukur Jóhannesson, who is no stranger to fantasy and historical TV shows. He was in The Last Kingdom, Vikings Valhalla, and played Lem Lemoncloak, a member of the Brotherhood Without Banners in Season 6 of Game of Thrones. Krach does indeed appear in later Witcher books, to be precise, in Yennefer's storyline. It will be interesting to see his role in Season 3, which is adapting Time of Contempt, the second book in the Witcher main saga. Redanian intelligence was also able to find out about another casting for the Witcher spin-off miniseries Blood Origin, which will be released on December 25th. British actor James Boyland will play another member of the Wild Hunt. He will appear alongside the Wild Hunt's commander Eredin, who will be portrayed by Jacob Collins-Levy in Blood Origin, and Voleth Meir, the villain of Season 2 of the main show. The spin-off will focus, among other things concerning the early history of the continent and the time of the conjunction of the spheres, on the legendary riders on the sky. Anyway guys, that's it for me for today. I hope you all stay safe and well. We talk again in the next episode of Breakfast in Beauclair. Until then, thanks again for listening, and good luck on the path.
Hey everyone, welcome back from the break. When we left off, Ciri and Yennefer were on the run, while Tissaia and Fringilla feel political pressure in Aretuza and Cintra. In the next scene, Geralt breaks Jaskier out of prison, reuniting for the first time since their hunt for the Golden Dragon. This is delightful. We haven't really spent a ton of time with Jaskier, I feel like, all season, even though we saw him, in the last few episodes. He is back in jail after the guards were chasing down him and Yennefer. Yennefer disappeared at the end of the last episode, so he's now by himself in the prison. And he has a delightful song, which he's singing with these two mice, one of which is named Gordon.
Love Gordon.
Which is cute, super cute. I mean, The Witcher has tons of odd names, so maybe I shouldn't be surprised. But he sings Horse in Prison Blues, which is very fun, and Joey's delightful a cappella as well. Jaskier's just singing to himself, enough to annoy the guard, who then runs into Geralt and immediately gets the shit beat out of him. So, yeah.
It was just like a very wholesome moment. Just in general, like the reuniting of Geralt and Jaskier. It's like, oh gosh, like the friendship. But yeah, overall their interaction was like amazing. Also, Joey Beatty is just like amazing at singing. And so my neighbor actually like has this big Great Dane and his name is Gordon. And I was like, oh gosh, it's completely different. Like a mouse and a Great Dane. And like, oh, Gordon is like an amazing name. I love it so much.
I knew a dog named Bruce, and I feel like people names for dogs are like always the best. I really wanted this cat that was named Agatha.
Oh my gosh.
She had little red nails.
This could be a controversial subject, actually. I feel like people's names for dogs. I feel like people could go one way or the other on that.
I'm all for it.
You're all for it?
Yeah. I feel like you have enough of like Smokies and what else do people name their dogs?
I don't know.
I feel like you see the same like 3 names recycled on Reddit. Like,
yeah, I was thinking if I ever got like 2 cats, I would name it like Codrainer and Fen.
oh, that's
man.
so cute.
I know, but I already have a dog and I'm like, I would love to, but not right now. Codrainer and Fen has to like wait for a slight bit.
Because every once in a while, I'll just like browse pet sites, right? I don't have the room for pets, so I'm not getting them. But there were these 2 kittens I wanted so bad because their names were Egg Noodle and Elbow Macaroni.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
I was like, holy shit, I need them. I need Egg Noodle and Elbow Macaroni. And I thought about them for a few months.
Oh my gosh, I love it. That's perfect names.
I mean, I would just call them Egg and Mac. Like,
Cute.
Egg and Mac.
one day.
But for now, you just have to live vicariously.
Yeah, through petfinder.com.
Every time you have pasta, you're going to think of those damn cats.
Oh my gosh.
They were so small. They were just little gray, like, dust bunnies with, like, little blue eyes. They were so cute.
Oh,
The blue eyes. I love them.
God.
Yeah.
Oh, pets. We can talk about it for so long. But
I know. But unfortunately, at the end of the scene, Jaskier leaves Gordon and mouse number 2 behind and follows Geralt. And as we can move along, Ciri and Yennefer ride towards Cintra and bond over their love of Geralt. I think we saw a clip of this briefly in the season 2 trailer. At the time, I kind of assumed that this was part of, chapter 7 of Blood of Elves, where Ciri and Yennefer are together at the Temple of Melitele. So this is comparable to a lot of the content that happens in chapter 7. They start asking each other about Geralt. Yennefer is just like, oh, you two must, share a tight bond. And Ciri kind of confirms that and tells Yennefer that Geralt's basically like a father to her. And she also asks what's been there between Yennefer and Geralt as well. It was a nice little moment that was very reminiscent of the books.
Always hilarious to hear either Geralt or Yennefer try and describe their relationship. It's such a cluster, and neither of them understand it at all. But I love Ciri's embracing of Geralt as a father. I think that is so sweet. One moment you can just see how far both of them have come, and starting to get that way with Yennefer as well, starting to establish that trust and opening up to her, asking those kind of questions like, what are you to Geralt?
yeah, and then like when Yennefer is actually using like very few words to describe her relationship with like Geralt, whatever, longing, regret, hope, and fear. So that was actually like a quote from Blood of Elves when Ciri was wanting to know more information about Yennefer.
Yeah, it's such a funny scene in the books because this is right when Ciri and Yennefer are like just getting to know each other, and Ciri still has some hesitation toward Yennefer, and Yennefer like doesn't really want to be there. But they're kind of sitting down and outlining like the terms of their like agreement, basically. And Yennefer's like, you can ask me anything. And Ciri's like, starting now? And Yennefer's like, okay, yeah, starting now. And that's the first question that comes out of her mouth. It's like, what is there between you and Geralt, Lady Yennefer? It was something along the lines of like Ciri was stunned at her own impertinence and the question that came out of her mouth. And then that's when Yennefer kind of like leans forward and she's like, longing, regret, hope, and fear. Yes, I don't think I've forgotten anything. And then they just move on immediately. So they're kind of establishing their trust, and that's where that quote comes in. But I think throughout both the books and, the series, especially with like Freya Allen's little face in the background, it's so interesting seeing Ciri, slash Freya's reaction to Geralt's relationships. We saw that in, I think, episode 2 or 3 when Triss came to Kaer Morhen, and Ciri's little face was in the back like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Same thing when Geralt and Yennefer reunited at the Temple of Melitele, and she comes in to like find them making out, and she's like, oops, sorry.
So awkward.
Yeah, I'm like, oh no, don't learn about relationships from these relationships. Like,
It's not a good example at all.
no. These are the worst relationships. Go somewhere else. Yeah, it is nice for them to find a common bond, especially because, as you said, Ciri's being so forthcoming with how she's feeling. And you can see it really chipping away at Yennefer again, like a testament to Anya Chalotra's performance. As we move on, Francesca and Filavandrel dote over their newborn child, but are interrupted by Fringilla. So this is a lovely scene. Francesca and Filavandrel are just kind of on the bed, rocking their baby, and Dara comes in and they're talking about a name. They consider like Cainwen, and then Francesca's like, LOL, absolutely not. And then they consider Fiona, which we know has like some importance in Witcher lore.
Maybe just a little bit.
Just a little bit. They also consider Lucerne, and Dara's like, oh, Lucerne's pretty, and it's nice to see him be a part of this. But Fringilla, who's been having that hard time with the generals all day, comes in. I think the way that she phrases it is like, 1 day is a hangover, 2 days is sedition.
Great line.
Which, what a line. Yeah, exactly. She reminds Francesca of the bond and the promise that they made with the Deathless Mother, and that in order to keep that, she believes they have to continue their partnership and their friendship. But Francesca turns around and she's like, well, we're friends, but family, blood, that's important, and I can't turn my back on that. So I'm sorry. And that's where we kind of leave their relationship, and Fringilla, having been rebuffed, turns increasingly more desperate.
I had a hard time focusing throughout that entire scene because I was looking at the goddamn adorable baby elf ears.
They were so cute.
So cute.
They were
oh my gosh.
adorable, and it like just totally distracted me the whole time. I couldn't look at anything else. I thought it was just adorable. And then, the only other thing I noticed in that scene that kind of made me laugh was when Filavandrel or Tom Canton gets out of the bed. It is so obvious that he twists his body to avoid the camera that's sort of panning in on the bed. And every time I watch it, it cracks me up a little bit.
I love Tom Canton here at the Hanza. Yeah.
We love him. Yeah, we love him.
Yeah. The baby baby elf ears. So cute. Well, I think that's been the first movie or whatever that I've seen a baby elf before.
Yeah.
It's always been children, with elf ears. But I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've seen a baby with elf ears. It was adorable. So.
Which it makes me wonder, do you think those are all just CGI? Or did they try and put some practical effects on that baby?
I was thinking that too.
From what I've seen, I think it might be a combination of both. I know that they definitely have prosthetic ears. We've seen that in some behind the scenes from all of the people who play elves. They've shown pictures of their prosthetics. But I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of smooth them out with CGI as necessary. I don't know if the baby's ears were CGI or if they were prosthetics. They could probably have taped on baby green screen onto the ear and then help that along. But the cool thing about the baby, I don't think in this shot because it is a real baby, but I think in previous shots, Tom Canton had posted some behind the scenes of the elven baby, and they actually stuck his face and Misia Simpson's face into some sort of generator that popped out what their baby would look like. So I think in some of the earlier episodes where they had just a very still baby and it was a fake baby, they actually used it, which was actually kind of cool.
That's super cool and probably kind of unnerving to be on set with that.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. I had no idea they did that. And that's going above and beyond, to show that connection. But wow, that's crazy.
That is a neat level of detail. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I guess it makes you wonder, I don't know. I feel the way that the storyline takes place, it's bam, Francesca's pregnant. And then she's like, oh yeah, Filavandrel, what about you? And then suddenly the baby looks like both of them. And I just wonder at what point the Deathless Mother was like, oh, okay. Let me just make a quick note of that.
Good point.
The timeline is just a little bit off, but it's fine.
The Deathless Mother thinks of everything.
everything. You know, one of the things that we learn about from this scene as well is the mentality of the elves. Filavandrel says, you know, very, very plainly, like, I never intended to fight for Nilfgaard. Francesca convinced me, but now she has given me a far better reason not to fight. It's time for us to rebuild, to grow strong again.
Yeah, at least in this scene, I guess like Francesca commented on Fringilla's like, oh, are these your words or are these Cahir's words? Because like, you know, she's been pushed by the general and Cahir to be like more stern and like you were saying, Alyssa, to show that she's in power. Francesca is like, okay, like we're friends. I know you. And like, this really doesn't sound like you. So it kind of also shows like, okay, they really got to know each other pretty well since they've been in Cintra, and they're able to pick out like, okay, you're not yourself. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. And I do like that it makes the worlds feel much more complete and it makes these characters feel more rounded. They have their own independent lives and their own independent goals and aspirations. And then to actually see what those things actually are for Francesca, it's obviously a bright elven future. For Fringilla, she still wants to obtain power in service of the White Flame. And those have been so aligned up until this point where there's tension and there's conflict. So it does make it feel much more real because we're seeing how nuanced all of these perspectives are.
Mm-hmm. And you can see how Cahir is starting to sort of wriggle his way into the minds of so many other people, right? Like they immediately know these are Cahir's words, not yours.
Our favorite little worm.
Oh.
I love him, just not yet.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, yes.
Give me like a season or two. And in the next scene, Dijkstra brings news of Nilfgaard's movements and the elven baby to the Brotherhood of Sorcerers. Dijkstra, we're seeing his work as a spy. As we come into the scene, Stregobor is still ranting. It's a baby. It's an elven baby, but not just an elven baby. It's an elven baby born to a mage. And it's like, oh my God, I'm so tired of his prejudices. It's been 2 seasons of this, and I don't want another half or 1 season of it. So yeah, Stregobor is still Stregoboring through the season. But Tissaia doesn't share the same concerns. And when she brushes him off, like, I think she says, like, only you see a threat where everyone else sees a baby. And then I think it's either Stregobor or Artorias that's like, oh, but you have a soft spot for the elves. And Vilgefortz is like, she doesn't have any soft spots. She's a leader on the council. And one of them is just like, oh, you'd know she had any soft spots. And just the whole thing just feels... I'm just like, oh my God, you guys are so old. Stop. So childish.
Yeah. Their age. Dijkstra, oh gosh, I just love Graham McTavish as Dijkstra, and I am really looking forward to him in the next few seasons to see like what he's gonna do, because as far as like his acting, he's like, okay, let me give you guys this as an idea and then let me work on the back and try to like screw everyone else over. Dijkstra, he mentions he's like talked about Triss coming back to Aretuza, and then Dijkstra's like, oh yeah, there's been strange stomach ailments this spring. Tissaia's like, oh yeah, Triss came here to heal, and that's kind of like calling from the blood of elves when Triss kind of got sick on their journey with Geralt and Ciri, and I'm like, ooh, yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that is that it seems like he's able to deduce or like pretend he's deducing that information like from her sickness itself, but it seems like he knows she was at Kaer Morhen. Beau, any thoughts?
Let the long flowing robe committee commence. Absolutely, I love every bit of it.
Oh my God, everyone looks so comfy.
I would like fashion to transcend to these kind of heights.
Yeah, invest in a kimono and a kilt, and I think you'll be good.
That's true. You could do this at any time. There's nothing stopping us at all. Any scene with all of these big players together, I eat it up. It's so fascinating. And like you said, Allison, Graham McTavish is amazing as Dijkstra. And he's like, talk about worm, right? He's playing this role of sort of spy master extraordinaire so amazingly well. You can sort of see the glint behind his eyes. It just makes him so happy to stir the pot and to get these players feuding with each other. It's really wonderful.
Another worm to add to the list. So we have Cahir and then Dijkstra. So
many worms and so many to come too.
I know.
It's going to be a long list.
Oh, it's going to be so long.
Yeah, and this is the beauty of The Witcher. Everybody sucks a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I feel like everybody ends up on this list at some point or another.
Pick the best poison and just hope for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And I feel like that just goes beautifully into the next scene in which we have Worm 3 and Worm 4. Rince and Lydia await their benefactor, and Rince gives her a bottle, the contents of which burn her face. As you guys, the listeners, will know from the previous season of Breakfast in Beauclair when we talked about Blood of Elves, we've met Lydia, I believe, in chapter 5 of that book. And she has already been disfigured by what we learn was some sort of magical artifact that someone had found. That has already happened by the time we meet her in the books. So when we met her in the Netflix series and she was, fine, I was really curious to see if and how that would actually play out. It's interesting that Rince was the cause of that as well in the Netflix series because he's such a dunce in the books. He's so dumb. He's so much more cunning and so much more terrifying in the Netflix series and feels like a very legitimate villain in a much more calculated way than he was in the books where he was just kind of recklessly doing a lot of things. I'm really curious to see where their partnership heads in future seasons.
Yeah, Rience is my favorite kind of villain.
Book rinse or show rinse?
I guess, yeah, I should specify show rinse. Like you said, in the book, he's just ruthless, uncalculating monster. But in the show, he's very much the opposite. Like you said, he's cold, he's calculating, and his whole presence, his whole demeanor, his look, everything about him is just sickening, honestly, and he gives you the creeps. And The Witcher is so good at creating villains like that, and I love every scene with him. He eats it up.
Yeah, and I really like how they actually brought how Lydia got her face to be the way it is. I liked that part of kind of bringing a reason, why did this happen or how did this happen? At least for the series, I'm really glad they incorporated that into the show. The room, oh my gosh. I mean, it was really well set up, and I think Bo also pointed out just how much detail it was put into kind of kind of a science/artist that Lydia is, and you can see around the room her drawings, especially of she has drawings of Laura Dorn, and so it's oh, this is cool. I like that aspect of the kind of setting of the scene.
Yeah, this was one of my favorite sets in the whole episode. It's every little nook has something to look at, and I would love to actually go there in person and look around and see all the drawings and everything. And obviously, like you said, Allison, it shows that Lydia is very well read to be depicting Laura Doran like that, and to have all of these. It's it'll be interesting to see what her goals are going in the future, especially now that she's got this ailment.
Yeah, and I feel like we get a slight glimpse of that right before it happens because Rince baits her and he manipulates her as well. He calls her something, and I'm forgetting what it is, but he's just fine, you can have the little bottle of blood. And she's really? He's I'm sure, your benefactor, your employer will come immediately as soon as, you do what you need to do with this. And her eagerness and her desperation to please is so apparent. It lends itself to a future storyline. In the next scene, Jaskier tells Geralt about his time in Oxenfurt with Yennefer and reveals that the sorceress had lost her magic. Geralt deduces that Yennefer has made a deal with the Deathless Mother, Voleth Meir, and shortly after, they are reunited with Yarp and Zigrin. So this is a huge exposition dump for, I think, everybody, the audience, the characters, everybody involved. Jaskier goes to take a bath, and we never see Henry Cavill shirtless this season, but we get Joey Beatty, we get Graham McTavish, we get a lot of other people.
Getting all kinds of bods. Yeah.
Yeah, Henry had the season off. He goes to do that. You can hang portraits on his nipples, yada, yada, yada. What a silly line. And Geralt is just kind of brooding on the side until Jaskier reveals all of this information. Oh, I bumped into Yennefer. Oh, she's alive. Oh, by the way, she's in leagues with the Deathless Mother. What? And all of this stuff is just coming out.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting when Jaskier was oh yeah, Yennefer said hut hut, and then Geralt's Voleth Meir, it's Voleth Meir, and I'm oh wow, that's a fast deduction right there.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if it's one of those stories that little witchers hear all the time, because we did hear about it, I believe, in episode 2 when Ciri and Vesemir are wandering around the armory and their like collection of dead Witcher things. And Vesemir's like, and this was the armor of the first Witcher. That like he had a silly name. I forget what it is now, but it was just like, and Phil.
And Gordon.
Yeah, Phil and Gordon, the first two Witchers. I forget what his name is off the top of my head. We will probably see him in Blood Origin this winter. Plus, of course, seeing Yennefer's storyline, it all kind of tracks. But yeah, Geralt comes to that conclusion quite quickly.
Yeah, and then when, like, Jaskier takes a bath in the, like, water, and then he gets out with, like, his boots. I mean, if you've ever walked in shoes that are wet, it's so uncomfortable. And, like, he's in boots that probably don't have any circulation, and it's just, like, full of water, and he's just gonna walk like that for however long. I'm just like, oh gosh, that just... so many blisters, I feel like.
Yeah, he's a madman.
They're never going to dry.
Yeah. Got to be some sort of weird gangrene or something that's going to come from that.
Oh.
Grim.
Please no.
Yeah, this whole scene, to fan myself off a little bit, whew, boy, oh dear. I don't know if any details have come out with Blood Origin, but it'll be interesting to see if we see another side of Voleth Meir and the first Witchers sort of taking her on, and if she doesn't appear in the flesh, maybe hearing about her in some way. Like it seems like it's potentially sort of leading into something like that, and I'll be curious to see how Blood Origins handles it, if at all. But yeah, an interesting little lore dump here. There's a lot to sort of dissect.
Very quickly, they're interrupted by none other than Yarp and Sigrid, which does feel like another fun little callback to Blood of Elves Chapter 4, which is the convoy and the hunt for Sherrowed, or rather, I think, like, the side quest to Sherrowed. Mm-hmm. We get to see Yarp. Jeremy Crawford is great. We love seeing him on screen. Yeah, it feels like a very bite-sized part of Chapter 4. So they catch up, and then they decide, whatever, we're supposed to be working for hanza of Cadwyn, but he could wait a little bit. Let's go hang out with you guys and see what you're up to. So they decide to make a detour with Geralt, which is very fun.
It's so wonderful to see these characters again.
Yeah.
All reunited together. Oh, man. The chemistry between all of these guys is just, it's wonderful. And I love the dwarven woman sort of making eyes at Jaskier too. Like it's he swoons them all, man.
Jaskier was he was talking to Yarp and Sigrid, or like introducing himself to someone. He was like starting to actually like use his full name, and they're like, oh, never mind. I forgot like what his actual like full name is.
Julian Alfred Pankratz, Viscount of Lettenhove.
Nice.
Yes.
I know the lore.
I love it.
What a weird job this is.
I think this is an amazing job. I am very jealous. So
it's very fun, and I'm very lucky. But the things that I must have emptied out of my brain to like make room for things like this, it's just information that's lost to time.
Have you seen that episode of SpongeBob when SpongeBob's like serving food and it's like, oh, empty everything from your brain, and it's like SpongeBob going in around all the SpongeBob's in his brain, like burning all the pieces of paper. And then like later on they're like, oh, what's your name? And he's like, what's his name? What's his name? Oh gosh, I love SpongeBob. He's amazing.
Aww, yeah, basically that.
Yeah.
Alyssa's brain is burning every single piece of paper, but one that has Jaskier's full name written on it. She's like, I must preserve this at all costs.
Yeah, I pinned it, clotheslined it.
It's lacquered and everything. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, just useless Witcher things to keep.
Love it.
Before we get to the rest of the discussion, we're going to take a break here. Next episode, join me, Allison from the US, and Beau from the US as we continue our discussion of Netflix's The Witcher, 207 Voleth Meir. Thanks for joining us at The Breakfast Table. For show notes, transcripts of each episode, and a complete list of our social platforms and listening services, head over to breakfastandbeauclair.com. Breakfast and Beauclair is created by Alyssa from GoodMorhen. It's hosted by Alyssa with the Tidings from Toussaint news segment by Lars Winterflix. The show is edited by Alyssa with music by Winterfilter Media. Breakfast and Beauclair is produced by Alyssa in New York City with Louise of Covier, the owner of the Churlish Porpoise, Katie, the redhead of Toussaint, Jacob B., Ava of Gullet B., Haven of the Edge of the World, Charlotte from Beckenberg, Glamorai, Red Kite, the original Roach, Cottinger's Cat, Libby, Jenny Mendelovich, Wolf, Corey from the US, John of Riblia, Tom from Australia, Jill Cape the Tabby Witch, Ollie from Sweden, James Carson III, Silas Head Sorcerer, Toussaint Knight, Jeanette of Brooklyn, Miriam of Temeria, Softy, and Mary the Moo. Special thanks to Allison and Beau for joining us for this episode, and our international Hanza for their support.